Okay, so let's start. So thanks to the organizers. I hope also, as we discussed it today with a lot of with Andreas, there might be a way to start collaborations with Japan in general. And also, it's a kind of weird because more or less 15 days ago, strange, 15 days ago, we had more or less the same similar symposium, which Andreas discussed before me, and then I say similar things. And also, it's important because I can give as granted some aspects related to the rubber and illusion constraints in general. So, and let's start with the title. So the first part of the title, which is a famous song by Von Fer, and also has been came to, let's say, to the forefront of rock and roll because of a cover by Miley Cyrus. And if you know the song and also maybe the story of Miley Cyrus, so the divorce of Miley Cyrus, you will understand what I'm going to tell you in a couple of seconds. So the idea is trying to convince you that so the experience of owning a body, so what is called body ownership, can entails also the experience of owning these voluntary actions in a sort of it should have been me fashion. So like, let's say, a kind of retrospective sense of agency at the end. So then this is, so whenever we sort of achieve wielded actions, there is this kind of experience of authorship over these actions, a sense of owning the actions, and also a sense of owning the sensory consequence of the action, which is known as the sense of agency, which is a conscious experience of a sort of motor cognition concepts of at conscious level, and it is known as sense of agency. And so in a way or in another, the explanation of the sense of agency is thought to kind of arise from what is known within the motor control theory as the forward model. So the idea is that whenever we intend an action, we create an efferent copy of the action. So, and when it happens that the predicted bodily states, the intended bodily states, and also the actual body states closely match, sense of agency arises. So what is the key point of this interpretation? What is the main idea of the interpretation? Let's say the main assumption. So the idea is that in order to sense of agency to arise, we need an efferent signal. We need an aim, a desire, a goal, so a sensorimotor prediction, a motor intention, maybe a motor execution, or something which is related to an efferent signal. So an efferent signal is absolutely necessary. And what I'm trying to say today is something a bit different. So I'm trying to argue that those signals, those afferent signals, subserving what is well known as body ownership, so whether or not the body part or the whole body is felt as belonging to the self, which is body ownership, can have a role per se in order to create and maintain the sense of agency. So it means that without any efferent signals, I'm kind of arguing that you can sort of, act per se on the sense of agency. So without any kind of motor-related efferent signals. So in other words, I can say that at least under some circumstances, sense of agency does not require the presence of efferent signals. And I will start from, let's say, from neuropsychological perspective. So it means that you try to understand the interbrain functioning, starting from patients, starting from a condition which the normal functioning of the system is broken. Then you try to make inferences on what is happening in interbrain function. So let's say it was 10 years ago, we found the first strange patient was like a stroke patient with hemiplegia, right brain damage with hemiplegia. And these patients, these patients was started to embody somebody else's hand. Then we studied a lot of patients. At least I think we tested 110 now present, and we discovered such kind of category of brain damage patients, which tend to treat and care somebody else and as their own. So it's like a neurologically based pathological embodiment of somebody else's hand. And so what is important here is that in a way or in another, it was not like a sort of verbal confabulation, because so for instance, if you threaten the embodied hand, so then they say, that's my hand, so somebody has hand, if you threaten them with the needle, in other conditions, you can sort of see that the patient actually experience pain feelings, and also the skin conductance response is sort of active as whenever we threaten the actual patient's hand. So it's like a real sensorimotor embodiment within the patient's sensorimotor system, and not as like a sort of verbal confabulation per se. What is important here? So in this kind of patients, also, so you can see it's not the full, not in the full, not what? It's just video or what? Yeah, it's working. Oh, it doesn't matter. So you can see this is the patient which is paralyzed. The patient's hand is here, and this is the Carlotta hand. So you ask the patients to move, but the patients cannot move because it's within vision. And then Carlotta on the back is reaching the target. So, and she's asked, did you reach the target? And actually was yes, I reached the target. Yes, and I reached the target. So you reach the target with your left hand, yes. And then he's treating, also carrying the Carlotta's hand as if it was her own hand. And also in this case, okay, so also, so you see here sort of a condition which there is a delusion of body ownership, so neurological based delusion of body ownership, which entails also a delusion of agency. So there is an embodiment on somebody else's movements with action as their own actions. And also in this case, we sort of demonstrated that it's not like a verbal confabulation, so purely like I would say, as it was me condition. This is real sensorimotor embodiment, because so in this paper we show that when the embodied hand is moving, so the hand is able to, to interfere with the actual patient movement of the right hand. So there are some kind of, maybe we can go in details later, there are some kind of bimanual coupling effect. So if you move one hand, then this hand with the same, you move one hand and also the other hand, you kind of impose some constraints to the movement of the other hand. And this happens also with embodied hand. So with embodied hand, and also the pathological embodiment is also able to change also the personal representation of the patient. So as you can see in the paper on the right, up on the right, and also the embodied hand is also able to change the peripersonal space and extrapersonal space. So like as it happens for one's own hand. So, and that's a demonstration of the fact that the hand is really embodied within the patient's sensorimotor system. So then starting with this neurologically based evidence, let's say, here there is a condition in which there is a neurologically based delusional ownership, which entails also a delusional agency. In other words, there is a condition which the patients embody also the movements of the embodied hand. So, and this is the hand. Also, the movements are misattributed to the self. Also, in at least in some papers, we show that the patient is really convinced to be the authors of the actions. So, but what this was like in neuropsychologically based context, then we tried to recreate the same condition, at least similar conditions in interbrain functioning. So we tried to see whether there was a way to recreate a setup in which we can reproduce the same kind of illusion. And then, as you may know, as you may expect, this was the case of the rubber and illusion. Andreas already discussed the concepts in general. So we know that whenever you stimulate synchronously the hidden participant hand and also the rubber hand, then you experience the proprioceptive drift, so the shift of the position sense towards the rubber hand, towards the faded hand, and also a sort of compelling feeling of ownership over that hand. We know, now we know the story, thanks to Andres in particular. And then also what is important here to know, it's the fact that the rubber hand illusion works in first person perspective. So whenever you stimulate synchronously the hand in first person perspective, but it does not occur if you stimulate asynchronously the two hands, or if the rubber hand is placed in like in congruent postures, like for instance in third person perspective. Okay, so then we have a condition which kind of induce an illusion of owning somebody else's hand, or a rubber hand in this case. But then we need to combine the illusion with another part of the story in which you can also check what is happening in terms of sense of agency. Then we started with this kind of pattern, which is a condition known as sensory attenuation. So whenever you stimulate, in general, it's the concept that the sensory consequence of your own actions are kind of physiologically and subjectively perceived as less intense than the same sensory consequence triggered by somebody else. For instance, if you press a button with the right and you trigger like a tactile stimuli or I don't know, an electric stimuli on the left, and there is another condition in which the same stimulus with the same intensities is delivered by somebody else. The first is underestimated. And this is called like a sensory attenuation. And this is known, at least in general, because there are also some criticism, an index, a clear behavioral and physiological index of the sense of agency. Then we have a condition in which we can induce an illusion on owning somebody else's hand that we can combine with a sensory attenuation. So we can measure what is happening when the own hand is delivering stimuli, when somebody else's hand is delivering stimuli, with the conditions in which an embodied hand can induce the stimulus. So we combine the things together, and basically we can sort of see what was happening when actually you delivered a stimulus to your own hand, or when a rubber hand, after synchronous stimulation in first person perspective, was delivering the stimulus, so an embodied rubber hand. Also with control conditions, so with conditions which the rubber hand, after asynchronous stimulations or in a third person perspective, was inducing the stimulation. So let's say self-generated condition with illusory self-generated condition with control conditions. And the idea was seeing what was happening in particular for illusory generated conditions. And what we saw at the end was that, so the stimuli, the self-generated stimuli, and also the illusory self-generated stimuli were underestimated as compared to other generated stimuli. And then also in other papers, we show that the illusory self-generated stimuli and self-generated stimuli sort of share temporal constraints, also neural correlates and physiological signatures. And then at the end, we sort of demonstrate that also in this case, there is not a delusional body ownership, but an illusory ownership triggered by that triggered illusory agency at the same in a similar vein. So the movements of the embodied end are misattributed to the self, and also the sensory consequences are underestimated. And so let's go through the discussion to the end. As I said, the actual interpretation of the sense of agency sort of say, okay, so we need an efferent signal. But in any way, we need an efferent signal. Here can sort of show that it's not always the case, but because we have conditions which sense of agency can sort of arise exclusively according to afferent signals, which are related to body ownership. So here, no comparison is possible. There is no match between intended and actual movement. So here there is something which is completely independent from body ownership. So what's the explanation here? What we can say? How can we integrate this idea with a classical, theory of forward model? Then I can go quickly to a paper in which we sort of administered the full body illusion paradigm in a first-person perspective and in a third-person perspective to a group of stroke patients to see whether, so illusory ownership, because you have illusion of ownership in the first-person perspective and not in the third. So whether illusory ownership can sort of change the motor system in a plastic manner, in a plastic fashion, let's say. And then at the end, we sort of demonstrated that actually was the case. So patients with gait and balance deficit experienced the illusion for 3 months. They actually improved in gait and balance, whether those without the embodiment did not improve. So the illusion of only body, which was actually, walking in the scenario, was able to change the brain, the motor system in a plastic manner. So then, how can we sort of integrate these things? The idea also, if you know the motor control idea or motor control model, there is also another sort of model which is known as inverse model, which is going actually in the opposite direction with respect to the forward model. So the inverse model is like to sort of individuate, sort of selecting the motor commands which are useful to reach a given body state, a given desired internal body state. And then the idea here that I'm kind of arguing, is that whenever you misrepresent an external object, like the body part or maybe the whole body, as belonging to a self, then this can be sort of becoming immediately a desired body state. And this, at the end, after this kind of misattribution, so the desired body state is able to activate in a retrospective manner the forward model, so activate efferent signals with all the related, conscious components. So it means that at the end, a sort of an apparent predicted body states can activate in a retrospective fashion the flow, the action flow, which is related to that specific desired body state in a sort of illusory fashion. And then this means a way to guarantee the access to the motor system when the forward information is lacking. As you may know, some kind of ideas related to rehabilitation of stroke patients are related to the absence of the forward model, and maybe you can work on the inverse model. So this could be also something we are testing as in terms of rehabilitation treatment. And this is something that can also maybe be useful in conditions which maybe the feedback of the motor system while I'm kind of acting are not sufficient to to create something which is useful to control the action. So mainly body ownership per se, so only afferent signals can sort of inform the motor system on the ongoing actions. That's the end.
Thank you for the talk. It was very interesting. So my question is around whether the increased delusional sense of ownership of body and the increased sense of delusional agency has a direct impact on the psychological well-being of that person.
On the psychological well-being?
Yeah, as in that increased positive effect in the person in the rehab setting.
Okay. I would say it's a kind of difficult to answer, because there was these patients were like also coming from different parts of Italy to be tested in this study. And I would say that I'm not sure it was good, because when they came back to the hospital, they said, oh, yeah, I had the experience that I was able to move for the first time because of the illusion. So they were all of them were being treated like with the normal procedures, but also one group was added the full body illusion, the other one was not. So those who came back after the full body illusion said, okay, I was in Turin, and then I experienced for the first time the ability to move in a correct way. And they also wanted to come back, but it was not possible. So not sure this is because you are kind of inducing experience of doing something which you are not able to do right now. So I would say that it's important, but it's not really. I don't know. I do not the answer. So some kind of strange feelings at the end. Also, there is a study we are doing on soccer player, which after surgical operation of the knee, but this is a kind of also peripheral normal conditions. Also, they experienced the movement of the knees, and it is strange in the way they move because they cannot move.
I have a follow-up question about the reverse neurological disorder, where you don't know, you have a delusion of disownership of your body. So you have to literally watch yourself to step the steps and then to realize to move forward. So that's your
it's a neurological condition, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the theory also holds for the other way, where they don't have the sense of agency over their body due to their neurological condition. And
this is something we can try to see what is happening.
Yeah, I have a similar question with these patients. I was wondering how many of them exhibited neglect, and whether that made them more likely to be able to recognize them.
Yeah, none of them, because they were kind of chronic patients. So they had problem of balancing gait, but like very, very tiny problems of balancing gait. So this could be a problem. Hello. It's a long time.
So I want to question if like it's essentially between afferent and efferent, so that as being like really separate, because so you mentioned somatosensory attenuation. So I think we agree that you can't survive without taking action to the world. So for instance, like
Sorry, so you can survive
without taking action into the world. So somebody just like feeds me, yeah, passively, yeah, so yeah. But I cannot survive if I don't have effort signals from the body, right? So if I need to process like effort signals all the time. And so this means that this are somehow in the background all the time. So you cannot really say that you have the sense of body ownership without effort signals, because you can get it just from the afferent. So so the idea here would be, so my question to you is like, when you say that one can have just like afferent signals, it's like, is that related more to the sense of the afferent signals, misattribution coming from the outside, and some sort of like, it's like putting everything else.
putting, sorry?
putting everything else in the background. Yeah. Because I think you agree with me that even if I don't pay attention to my heart still needs to beat, otherwise I'm going to
Yes,
die
sure.
dead, right? So this means that my brain still needs to process efferent information, and it has to be done all the time. Yeah.
Sure,
And
sure.
this means that I might actually, misrepresent afferent information. That doesn't mean that the efferent.
Let's say, I mean, to specify, the idea was that, so the union, it's possible to act upon the sense of agency without those afferent signals which are kind of following like a desire to move, let's say. So we know that afferent signals can be important, but here there are conditions which the patients, so also in the rubber and illusion experiments, you don't know whether then is moving or not. So there is a pure body on, so any movement is prevented. So you are asking to the participant stay still, and also you don't know whether the rubber and illusion is moving or not, so it's pressing the button or not. So in a way or in another, I want to kind of stress that body ownership per se, so afferent signals here without any, because here afferent signals are prevented, so you cannot know whether also there will be like a follow-up movement, and maybe you see the movement and you can say, okay, maybe I will move. So here there is a situation in which any afferent signal is prevented, so you can act upon motor system. Obviously, when you act, there are afferent signals. I was saying that it is like saying that maybe in some conditions, just seeing your own body is something which is kind of able to act upon the motor system. Obviously, there are afferent signals during movement, during wheel action, during passive action. So to specify, it's related to the fact that you can sort of act upon the motor system in a sort of retrospective way, I don't know, without in a way, to some extent, maybe only under some, maybe in these patients, maybe I remember when I was in the administrator lab, he told me like, yesterday I remember that I put the key there just because of my position set. It might be some kind of signals that are able to help you when afferent signals are not present, but this is maybe only a very specific context, but I am absolutely in a general sense.
Yeah, that's one. So usually it shows that in the heavy gradient patients, in heavy gradient patients, so it shows that or having the regional ownership doing that attribution agency. I wonder so whether similar kind of phenomena can be observed in the MC subject or not.
You mean if you can sort of, yeah, in a sense, is the experiments with the rubber illusion are similar. So you can induce, so the idea, I would say, like ownership first. Also, I mean, the idea is that whenever you embody the rubber end in these experiments, then also you can also observe, and so that the movements, the wheeled action of the hands are kind of embodied. So ownership and then agency. So it's, I would say that it's a similar fashion.
Yeah, it's possible. Okay. So, are there any questions? Yeah, it's time. So thank you very much for that.